The OSEE GoStream Duet is a compact switcher that might look familiar, but this has a couple of pretty neat tricks and solves a lot of the limits of the ATEM Mini. Before we get started, I do want to thank OSEE for sending out this switcher for me to share with you on the channel. This is a really neat device, and I want to spend some time going through all the different features on it. So we're going to start by taking a look at the physical device, and I'm going to show you what the ports are on the back. So along the back, we've actually got 4 HDMI inputs, and on the side, there are 4 SDI inputs. You might be wondering, does that mean it's 8 input switcher? No, not exactly. Actually, there are 4 main video channels that you can take input video from, either HDMI or SDI, and I'll show you how to change that using the settings on here in a second. There is one other video channel you can use, which is called aux, and in that video channel, you can bring in video either over NDI, playing back videos from an SD card, or you could actually plug in a USB webcam. Along the back, you'll also find 2 USB ports, so that can be used for either a webcam or plugging in a hard drive. There are 2 microphone inputs, and there's also a headphone output. So already, even before we dive into this, you can probably imagine how flexible this is and how many different things you can actually do with it. For example, with the 2 HDMI outputs, that gives you a lot of flexibility. So over here, you can see I have a monitor plugged in on top of the GoStream. This monitor is being fed from an HDMI output. I can actually go ahead and change this if I wanted it to not be the multi-view, and I could make it actually be program output or a pass-through of any one of the inputs. So if I wanted to use it for this kind of monitoring, but then also send out a copy of one of the cameras to like a screen somewhere, I can actually do that using the second HDMI output. One of the other major differences you'll notice between this and an ATEM is how many more buttons there are. And these buttons are actually useful. So let's start with the first main program preview bank of buttons here. This top row controls what's in program, which means that's what's being recorded or live streamed. The bottom row is preview, which queues up your next video. So if I first have my main camera in the program here, but I've queued up the overhead shot, I can now use the T-bar, the slider, to do a crossfade between them, or I can actually press one of these 2 buttons, either auto, which will run the transition automatically, or cut, which just does a hard cut. So there's the 4 cameras. There's also aux, which I mentioned is that 5th video channel, which could be video from an SD card. There's a super source button, which is actually going to let us do layouts with side by side on top of a background. And then there's 2 images you can load in. So still 1 and still 2. You could use that for a logo, for example, or you could use it as a background in the super source. You have a couple of buttons over here to control what kind of transition you want, whether that's mix or dip, which will actually go through like a color when it does a transition. There's wipes. And then this preview button lets you actually preview what the transition looks like before going live. So I'm actually going to pop over and take the second HDMI out of this and bring it into this recording. And that way you can actually see the full multi-view of the GoStream very clearly in this recording. So now I can show you how this preview button works, for example. We'll go ahead and select the wipe transition. I'll press preview. And now actually the preview window is showing the same thing that's in the program. And if I press auto, it's actually going to run that transition in the preview. And that way you can actually preview it before you actually are doing your transition live in the live stream or in the recording. If I take that preview button and toggle it off, now when I press auto, it's actually going to do that transition live. Now this is a funny transition because this is actually the wipe transition that's got a media loaded into the wipe. So I can start showing you now how to actually go to the settings to change these kinds of things. But before we do that, a few more quick notes on some of the other buttons here. Over here, you have buttons that control the audio. So this is actually a great way to quickly toggle on and off audio from different channels. So let's say I have a microphone plugged into mic 1. I can actually go here and then press on, and now that's enabled the audio from that mic channel. And if we take a look at the multi-view, you can watch what happens here. Watch when I toggle on and off, you can see that that mic channel is turning on and off as well. So I can go ahead and do this for any of the channels as well. I can take HDMI input 1 and turn that on or off if I want to. And it's just a lot faster way to manage the audio control compared to doing it, for example, by diving through the menus or even taking a computer and controlling it that way. Also along the top here, we've got buttons for macros. I'll get into macros a little bit later. There's this little twist knob and this menu button. That's going to let us control the on-screen menu. Then we've got buttons for the keys. So that's going to be the upstream key, which lets us do picture-in-picture, or the downstream key, which can let us overlay a logo, for example. At the very top, there's buttons for recording and playback. So record does what you expect. That'll start recording either to the SD card or a hard drive. And then playback is actually for playing back video clips from the SD card. So I actually do have a video queued up, It's a little time lapse I did, and it's in that aux channel. So I can go ahead and press the play button, and I can see that it's playing back that video clip that's on the SD card. Okay, so that's it for the physical buttons. Let's dive into the menu, and I'll show you a lot more of the settings that we can go into here. And this is actually one of the points that I want to mention here, which is this device, unlike the ATEM, you can actually control everything from the physical buttons on the device. You don't need to bring a computer to control it. Now, there is an application for the computer that you can use, and that looks like this. So this is a application that you can download for Mac or PC, and this also lets us control everything in the device. It is a little bit faster to do some things in this application compared to using the physical buttons, like, for example, configuring your live streaming settings, but it is also very nice that you do have the ability to use the physical buttons to control everything. So let's go back to this view, and I'm going to show you the menu system now. So first I'm going to press menu, and notice that the rightmost part of the screen has now changed to take over and show this menu. I can scroll through the menu by twisting the knob, and I'm going to press the knob to go into one of these settings. So let's, for example, go into the super source. I'll press that knob, and now I can continue to scroll down. If I wanted to go back, I press the menu button again, and it closes that. So that's the basic menu navigation, and the whole system works that way. So let's first go down to the very bottom, and there's a setting menu here. This is kind of like system settings. It shows you what firmware version you're on. I'm on 2.1.3. This is where you can actually change the names of all of your input sources if you want to. You can choose whether you want the audio meters to be on the different sources. You can actually choose your different multi-view layouts. There's a couple of different ways you can configure the multi-view. So here I have program over on the right, and I have the preview on the left. But if you want to swap those, you can. Some people like it better this way. I definitely prefer it this way, so I'm gonna keep it like that. But there's also different options you have for the video sources. Style 2 puts the 4 video sources on the left, and then you've got your aux and your still picture on the right. And now the menu is covering up the audio and the still graphic, which if you're going to be going to the menus a lot and you want to still see your video sources, this is really useful. I do actually prefer having my video sources on one row, so I'm going to go back and change that again. If you want little safety guides, you can turn those on in the preview window here. I don't typically use them. I'll just leave them off. Here is a mic input setting. So I mentioned that there are 2 physical microphone inputs on the back, and you can choose whether you want these to be line level or mic input or mic and power. So if you do have a wireless mic receiver plugged in, for example, then those usually output microphone levels because they're expected to go into cameras. So you can choose that here. This source selection is where you go and configure whether you want the 4 video inputs to be HDMI or actually using the SDI ports on the side. So here you can actually, if you do have some SDI sources like cameras that are really far away running on long SDI cables, you could say run one of those into input 4, and then go ahead and choose the SDI here, and that will make it actually use the SDI input instead of the HDMI. I have all mine set to HDMI auto right now, which usually works pretty well, but sometimes some devices are a little bit weird in terms of the HDMI output format they provide. And this actually lets you configure the exact format of HDMI that you want to use if you're having problems. So let me show you what happens if, for example, I go to input 3, which we can see in the little preview window here, and I'll change it to one of the other settings like this one. So sometimes you plug in a device and it looks like this because it didn't negotiate right. So if you happen to know what format that is sending, you can go ahead and actually force it. So I'm going to just set mine back to auto because for at least what I've got plugged in now, that has been working well. This is also where you choose what you want the aux input to be. So the aux input is the 5th video channel in the switcher. And right now I've got it set to the storage device, which means this is going to be playing back videos from the SD card. You can also change this to a webcam. So if you have a USB webcam plugged in, then you can change your aux channel to use the webcam, or you can actually use NDI as an input source. You do have to get the NDI add-on, but sometimes they include it in a bundle when you're buying the switcher. So if I toggle this to NDI, you'll see that video disappears, and now it's waiting for an NDI source. This is actually a really great way to bring in a wireless camera, which is also pretty unheard of in video switchers that are this kind of form factor. Now that I've got NDI selected, I'm gonna go back out of this menu. This is the one thing that doesn't make any sense because there's no button for it, but just bear with me. If you press and hold on the play button, then it will bring up a menu that lets you choose an NDI source. This actually is going to discover NDI sources on my network and let me select them in this menu. Doesn't really make a lot of sense that you press the play button for this, but there isn't another button on the switcher that they could have used, I guess. So I can take my phone, for example, and I'm going to go and run the app called NDI-HX Camera. And this is going to just put my phone's camera onto the network as an NDI source. So let me, oh, there, it popped up already in that list. So if I select the iPhone, you can see that now the aux input is my iPhone's camera, which is a great way to bring a wireless camera in. It just works. It's great. And the latency is actually pretty good too. Like you can see compared to, that's really confusing. let me get this in a spot that is maybe a little bit easier to see the delay. There we go. So yeah, now notice like the delay is pretty good compared to the cameras. It's just the tiniest bit off. So it's a really great way to bring in a wireless camera with just not a lot of trouble. It does only support NDI-HX, so some NDI apps don't support NDI-HX in the right format, so do double check. But if you do try to select an NDI source that it doesn't recognize, it'll tell you, which is really nice. So if I go back and select, for example, my Pro Convert, which is putting an NDI feed that's not HX onto my network, I will select that. And now it actually says down here that an NDI source is detected, but it is not the right format. So this is a really great way to do wireless cameras, and iPhones make great secondary cameras for that purpose. I'll go back into the menu here and set this back to SD card playback. So we're going to go back to source selection, scroll down to aux, and then choose storage device. Okay, quickly going through the rest of the settings here before we get into some of the other video settings. Output format, you can actually choose what frame rate you want the HDMI output to use. I have mine set to 1080p 30. You can also choose the HDMI color space. So again, if you're plugging this into something and it's not showing up right, you can force the color space into the different HDMI formats. Output source, this is where you choose what your HDMI outputs are going to send. So I have both of mine set to multi-view because the screen in front of me, I want to see the multi-view here, and I want to be able to bring the multi-view into the actual recording here. But I could, for example, change this to be any of the other video sources. So it could be a pass-through of any of the HDMI. It can also be your aux, it can also be your program feed, or even your preview. And you can change both of the outputs independently to any of these settings. You also get to choose what goes out the USB output if you're using this as a webcam input into a computer, and that is also selects what is being streamed and recorded. This is the one limit of this that I wish was different, but I wish that you could change what gets recorded and streamed separately from the USB output. I really wish the USB output was configurable as a separate output source, but unfortunately they bundled those together and it's just the one encoder that is encoding the video for the streaming, recording, and USB output. If you could have selected the USB output separately, it means that you could, for example, take your camera 1, pass through the USB into your computer while recording something different than that camera. And that's really useful for doing, for example, recordings of a Zoom meeting where you are doing a presentation in Zoom and you want to capture your slides and your camera in a nice layout, but then send just your camera to Zoom. I have another video on my channel, I'll link down below, that talks about different devices that you can use to do that. But that is the one limit that I have found with this device. Okay, we've got quality settings. There are 3 settings. You can choose high, medium, or low for recording and streaming. We've got network settings. I've just got mine to DHCP, so just grabbed an address off of the network. You can choose how bright you want the buttons to be. Maybe I should actually turn these down so that I can get the recording to look a little better. And then you can choose your fan speed, low or high. I don't know if you can hear it on the recording, but it's pretty loud in high mode. So I'm going to leave this down at low. I can hear it in the low setting, but it's not terribly loud. This lets you actually import and export the full settings of the whole switcher. So if you are switching between doing different shows and having all the different settings, you can just do an export and then restore them quickly later. Now that I got the buttons dimmer, I'm actually going to change my camera exposure so this is a little bit brighter now. There are language settings. So if you wanted to change this between different languages, a couple different options there. I'm going to put it back to English so that I can actually see what's going on here. And then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the settings page. Let's go through the playback here. So this is going to choose how you want the videos to be played back. I've actually got it set to repeat the one video. So if I hit play, it's going to start playing that and it should just loop back when it's done. There's also this progress bar, which it's covered up right now, but if I back out of this, you'll see the progress bar is on top of the audio meters down there. And that way I can actually see how far until the video is done. So if I do have this on air, for example, I can see I'm watching the progress bar and I can wait till it's done, and then I can cut back as soon as that hits the end. So right about now, and that way you didn't see the loop in the video, but now, you know, it's just looped back to the beginning and it's ready to queue up again. Okay, back into the menu. So that's the playback section. We've got the stream section. This is where it's a lot easier to set up in the computer app. So I'm going to wait until we go there. But this is where you can choose the different platforms, your stream key. You can save stream keys in text files, which is kind of nice. Then you can quickly load them. And this can actually stream to 3 different platforms at the same time. So notice that there's 3 different options here. So I can have it stream to 3 different RTMP servers and turn each one of them on and off if I want to. Right now I only have 1 enabled, and those 2 are set to off. So when I hit the stream button over here, it's going to actually start streaming to just that one platform. Macros are where you can actually program multiple button presses that you can run from pressing a single macro button on the device. This is really useful, especially for complicated layouts. Like if you wanted to do some upstream key settings, you can kind of save those as macros to quickly run them. The still generator, this is where you choose which images to put into the 2 media players. So there are 2 slots that you can have active for graphics, but you can actually upload a lot more graphics into this and have them ready. It's just that you can only have 2 as video sources selected. So these 2 still buttons, this will actually choose which of the 2 media players is on air. And this is the menu where you choose which graphics that are loaded go into those media players. Let's go to the still upload section first. So there are like 31 slots. Only 2 are in use right now. I have my channel art and I've got the background, but I have another slot here that I could use to load up another graphic. So let's go and scroll down here to load picture. This is where it'll scroll through the different images that are on your SD card. And then if I click this, it's going to take a minute to go and load it into that slot. There it goes. So now that's queued in location 2. So now that we have that in location 2, if I go to still selection, then still 1, still 2, these are the names of the two media players. I can change still 2 to load the graphic that's from slot 2. So I can change what's going into that still graphic. Now I can quickly switch it between these different things. And this is why it took a second for that graphic to load in, because it's actually copied it now to the internal memory rather than like loading it from the SD card. So now it's really instant to change what is actually loaded in that slot. And that way you can actually get a whole bunch of graphics ready, whether that's like lower thirds or logos or different backgrounds. And then you can quickly change what is in the actual media player. Okay, here's the audio mixer section. This is, again, this is the sort of deep dive version of the quick button access you get here. So mic 1, this is where we can change the fader left and right, the gain. If you want to add a delay because your cameras have an HDMI delay, you can add a little bit of a delay here to match. Usually you'll need to do that because most cameras don't have, most cameras do add a delay on the HDMI out. So if you're bringing in audio from a microphone that's wired in, you'll need to delay it to match. And then this is where you can toggle on or off. And you can see that button is changing to match the on-off state that I'm switching in the menu. You can do that for all the different, the mics, as well as the different 4 video sources, and even aux. Your aux, if you have audio in that video that's being played back, you can do that as well. Monitor is the headphone output. So this is where you can choose what you want to listen to, which is great. If you want to listen to program audio, you can. You can also change it to any of the inputs. So if you only wanted to monitor what's happening on aux, for example, because that's an NDI feed that's coming from some remote system, then you can be monitoring that separately before it's actually on air. In this common section, we've got audio switching, which is going to let us do either a hard cut or a effect with audio switching, which should be like a crossfade. This of course only applies if you have audio follows video turned on. So if we go back into one of these settings with a camera, then there's, for example, if we turn that on, we can also see that we can scroll over to the audio follows video. So that way, if camera 1 is on air, then the audio from camera 1 will be on air. And if I change that to camera, also set that for camera 2, you'll see that now you can see actually how much faster it is to use these buttons here. So I can go toggle AFV on for camera 2. I can also do that for camera 3 and camera 4. And now if we go back and look at the audio mixer, as I am switching to the different cameras, you can see that the audio meters are telling me which audio input's on air as well. So the green indicates that it's, you know, queued, it's ready, it's set to audio follows video, but then the red icon is the one that's actually on air. So if I turn off the audio from camera 4, then its icon goes gray, and now if I go over to camera 4, there is no audio, right? Except my mic 1 is on the air. Great. So a lot of different audio options in here, and the nice thing is these physical buttons over here give you a very quick way to access at least turn them on or off, and also change the gain on here. So you can use this little wheel to scroll and change the gain. Okay, back into the menu. We've been going from the bottom up, I guess. Fade to black. So there is a FTB fade to black button, and this lets you choose the duration of that fade. So if I press that, it's set to 1 second right now. You can change the duration. You can go up to 8 seconds if you want, or down to half a second. 8 seconds is very long. I don't know what you would do with that. You can also choose whether the audio is going to fade out as well. Downstream key. Okay, so this is for logos. So this is, well, not just for logos, but logos are a typical thing you could do with it. Let's go ahead and actually load a logo into the media player. So this is one of the uses for these still players, right? I've got 2 backgrounds in mind, but let's go and change what's in still 1 to be more like a logo. So up to setting, up to still generator. I don't have anything like a logo loaded yet, so I have to go pick a slot for it. Let's say it's in slot 3, and there should be a logo. It comes with a logo built into the SD card. Or I've got a lower third. Yeah, let's use my lower third here. Logo, lower third, same idea, right? Okay, so it's going to load that into the media player, or sorry, load it into slot 3, which now I have to go into still selection and put that in one of the media players. Let's say still 1 is going to be my background, and still 2 is going to be that lower third. So now that that's ready to go, now we can go back to downstream key and configure the source. So let's say the source is, you can see it can be any of the video sources if you wanted to use videos as overlays, but I'm going to use still 2 as the fill source and still 2 key as the key source. I'm not going to mask. That would let us like crop if we wanted to crop it. Yeah, so that's the downstream key setting. To actually turn it on, we use the button here. We go to the menu, and if I press on air, it should bring that lower third up. So now you can see that, for example, if you had a bunch of different people, you could make different lower thirds for them, and then very quickly, if you load them all into the media slots, you can quickly change what's in the still player to match. And this is an example of what is a good use of the macros, where you can record a macro that would choose which graphic to put in there, and then you can use the physical buttons to change them. Okay, so now I can just bring that on and off the air. You can also cue it with the transition, so you can see in the preview I've turned that off. Now I'm going to go to the mix transition, which is going to do a crossfade, and when I press auto, it's going to then fade out, and now the overlay is not on air. So that's with that little downstream key button pressed. That means it's in the preview and ready to come on air when you do a transition. So I'll turn that off, and now if I do a transition, it won't come back. You can also just press on air and it'll just immediately bring it on and off. Okay, back into the menu. That's downstream key. So that's useful for a bunch of different stuff. Transition, this is where we go into the different settings for the transition. So right now I've got the mix set to 1 second. That's too long. I usually like having it at half a second. So now the crossfade is a lot faster. I don't usually use crossfades for the most part anyway when I'm doing things, but when I do, I like it to be pretty fast. If we go to dip, it's going to do a crossfade, but it's going to, while it's crossfading, show us something in between. And you can choose what that thing is. The source can be any one of your video inputs, or it could be a color, or it could be one of the graphics, or the color generators. So let's say it's my what's in still 1, for example, and now I'm going to choose the dip transition here, and when I press auto, it's going to do a crossfade through my background before actually bringing the other one back on air. I really don't use this very often, but it's cool that it has it. The wipe is the same idea. This is where we get to choose the different patterns of what type of transition, wipe transition to do. So this one is just like a typical, left to right wipe. We've also got top down, we've got like different styles. These are, more creative or whatever. But then you get to choose the duration of it as well as the fill source. So this was my attempt at doing a stinger with it. Actually, let's see if this can work. I have to go find the stinger video that I uploaded, and this is one of the things I actually kind of prefer to do on the computer just because it's a lot faster. I can go into the menu here and go find the right video file. I'll show you what that looks like, and then I'll show you how to do it on the computer. So I'm actually going to get out of the menu first, and then I'm going to hold down on the play button. So it's kind of like how we use that to select the NDI source, but now that the aux is the SD card, it's going to show us a list of all of the video clips. So it's not too bad. Like I can, quickly scroll through and see the file names here. And I do have a folder that I made called Stinger, and this is where I'm going to load that clip in. So the other way to do it is on the computer. Let me go back to the app really quick and I'll show you what that looks like. So here is playback and record, and it's just here. It's just, same list. It's just a little bit faster, I think, to use the computer because you don't have to worry about the menu system. Anyway, let's go, and now that I've got that queued up, if I click play, we'll see it run really quick. Oh, it's looping it. So that's my Stinger transition, and I was trying to use it as a wipe. So we go to the wipe transition. Let me go back into the menu because we need to configure the transition. We'll go into wipe, and then here down in the fill source, yeah, it's aux, and that should play as soon as I run the transition. So if I press auto, oh, it didn't run. It didn't actually play it. I guess I can't quite do what I wanted to do with it. If I just let it continually play, it's kind of silly, but I guess it might work. No, it doesn't work at all. You could imagine that maybe if you had a different video loaded in there, it might look somewhat interesting. Anyway, I'm not a big fan of these creative transitions anyway. I just leave mine set to mix and make it as short as possible and just keep it simple. So let's go back and load in that other video. I guess it is actually pretty quick to scroll through on the on-screen thing. Go select the prog video and let's let that run. Okay, picture in picture. This is where you can configure the upstream key, well, what would be called an upstream key in an ATEM. But the picture-in-picture is this other first column of transition buttons. So here we can choose what's in the source. So let's say I've got my overhead camera in the program, and I wanted to put my face in the corner. So I can choose input 1 here, or of course any of the other inputs, and then size and position. So this will be 33%, and this is the position. This isn't gonna make any sense until this is actually on air. So let's just press the on air button, and now you can see it. So here's where we can change the size. So let's make it like that. This is, change where it is. Let me scoot it over there, and then I will add a mask. So I go down to mask here. We can turn on the mask, and horizontal end, let's bring it in from the right side. And if I go down more, there, we can see it's cropping it. So we'll do like that. And then on the horizontal start, we can go like that. So I'm just scrolling with the wheel, pressing to confirm. You do get a border option as well. So if you wanted to put on a little border, you can choose the size. The border has a color setting. So let's go set that here. I don't really like that color, so let's make this a little bit less saturated, and maybe let's go and change the hue to be like something more like my green. So this is the picture-in-picture settings, and then to actually use it, you can queue it up with a transition. So if you press that key button down there, now I've got my main camera in the preview window, and if I press auto, it will do exactly what you want, which is switch back to the other scene, and then it keeps the picture-in-picture in the preview ready to come back when you, let's say I have that angle configured. So I press preview input 4, I've got the picture-in-picture queued, and if I press auto, it will bring both on air at the same time. So that was the picture-in-picture section, but I should, before we go up more, I'm gonna go up to this key type up here. Key type is actually lets us change what kind of key that's doing. And this is set to picture-in-picture right now, which is why when I press the on-air button, that's why it's doing the picture-in-picture. If I change type to one of the other types of keys, you can see that that's what the other menu options correspond to. So Luma key, for example, means it's going to remove the dark parts of an image. So you can use that you can use it for graphics if you want, but you could also use it if you could use it for video. I don't think I really have any video sources that are going to make sense for that. Maybe my computer screen could be fun as a demo, so let me do that really quick. I'm actually going to send my computer screen into input 2 here. So now we've got the GoStream app loaded up, and you can see it's got a dark background, so we can actually Luma key it on top of my video. So with that selected, we can go into the Luma key setting here and then choose the source. So instead of from the still player, we can make it HDMI 2, and the key source will also be HDMI 2. Fill is the graphics that you're going to see, and then key is what it's going to actually use to make things transparent. We are not going to mask it. Actually, we are going to mask the top part of it because I've got, we'll do that after it's on the air, because I've got that little title bar that I want to cover up. Let's turn it on with the button. So on air, you can see now I've overlaid my computer screen. So now we can go into the settings and change it. So let's go turn on the mask and crop the top part, which will then remove that menu bar. Great. And then we can go into control here. And this is going to let us tweak the different start and end points of the key that it's doing. Okay, so I've got the clip and gain here, which are going to choose, which is going to select like what parts of the image to make transparent. So as I change the clip, you can see that it's go back to the clip setting, go into there we go. So as I scroll to the left, you can see that at 0% or down here, that gray that's in the computer screen is actually now not dark enough to become transparent. And as I change the threshold for the clip, eventually that's going to become transparent. And if I go again, more of the dark grays become transparent, and I can keep going. And now we've got more and more, right? And then gain is the other end of it. You can see how it's changing, how much of it is actually showing through. So let me set it to about like that, so you can kind of see the buttons. Shaped key is, I think, their way of saying pre-multiplied, but that just means that if you have a graphic that already has like the transparency built in, this doesn't really make sense in a video source, but it works better for like graphics that are loaded into the media player. But I'll turn that off here. So this is Luma key. One of the other cool things in the Luma key is that it lets you resize it. So if you wanted to scale it down into the corner and key it, then you can actually do that. And that can be really, really useful for logos and lower thirds and things like that. So that's Luma key. This also has a Chroma Key. So if we have a green screen, for example, we can actually do a Chroma Key. Let me pull mine up really quick. Now, I don't have the best lighting in here for this, so it's not going to be a perfect demo. I'm not really set up. You can see it's kind of too dark on the side over here and over here, but we'll see what it can do anyway. So let's go change the key type here to Chroma Key, and then we'll just turn that up, and then we will go into the Chroma Key setting and change the source to be input 1. And now we need to Chroma Key this on top of something else. So I'm going to, for example, put that in the program, and then let's turn the key on. And this is not doing a good job first. So let's go into the settings. First, I am going to mask off that edge. So I can turn that on, and then I can change the horizontal end, which is going to bring that in. And that way, since I don't even have a green background over there, that's just going to solve that problem. Let's say I do want to resize this because I want myself to be down in the corner like this. That's kind of cool. So we'll go ahead and change it to like that. And then since I want to be more closer to the edge there. Okay, great. And now, of course, the color. So this is where we can actually sample. If we can actually sample a green off of the screen. So let's go and change the sample position. With sampling turned on, I can scroll this little cursor around until I am going to choose the green, or choose the part of the screen to grab. I'm going to choose that part that's right next to my face, and then we will turn sampling off, and that will save that color. Now you can see it's already doing a much better job. My screen is not well lit, so it's a little fuzzy around the edges, but there's more settings. So let's see if we can get it to improve it a little bit with these. Yeah, that's actually doing a pretty good job. I can go all the way, crank it all the way up there, and it's doing a pretty good job. Foreground is not helping with this. Key edge is helping. Great. So even with my terribly lit background, it's actually doing a pretty good job. And I can solve some of this with masking on the other side too. So I could mask off some of that, and maybe from the top as well. We can go down a little bit about there. Hey, that's pretty good considering how poorly my screen is lit. Just a little bit more light in here, and this would be a great key. Let's go back and just make this full screen and to get a better sense of what this actually is looking like. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Great. So now let's talk about SuperSource. SuperSource lets us do these fun layouts of side by side on top of different graphics. So I've got my background set in Still Player 1, and if I turn on the SuperSource, it is now available as a source I can change to. So, for example, this button here, this is going to put SuperSource into the program, and this is the layout you can do. One example. So here is where you choose what you want in the boxes. For example, background could be a still player, or it could be a video source. I can actually have it be like this. The video player, if you want an animated background, it can be one of the cameras. So, you know, different options there. I'll leave it as my still background. And then the box 1 and box 2, you can change what goes into those as well. So you can use, let's put box 1 like that, and let's put box 2 over here. You could also use this to like bring in your computer screen and put your face on the side. And then you get all the options for different sizing. So control, this is going to be different options for how you want the two boxes to interact. Zoom out is this sort of side by side, both of the same size. Crop zoom out will crop one and then scale the other one down. This is actually really great for presentations, for example. Let me bring my computer screen back into the switcher here. So with my computer screen at input 2, now I can actually go and let's go back to source and change source 2 to be my computer screen. And now I've got a nice way to do a presentation, right? I've got sort of cropped version, if I scoot over into the center, cropped version of my camera next to my computer, which could be running a PowerPoint. The other options for the layouts, you could crop the other way around, depending on how your cameras are configured, or just crop both, which is just a side by side, so there's no background visible. I really like this one. I think this is really useful for a lot of things. So then let's go into the other settings here. You can mask either of the sources, so we can go and let's say crop this down from the top in case you wanted to sort of change how much of those are visible. So I can do something like that. And then you also have borders. So let's go ahead and add a border on my camera. I don't like that color, so we will change that color to maybe like a blue or a green. Yeah, so you know both boxes can have borders as well. So you get a lot of options for configuring what that looks like. So let's go turn that off. Change this back to side by side. Oh, I didn't show you the Y position, so you can scoot it up and down if you wanted to like leave room for graphics down on the bottom. If you had tickers or lower thirds or something, you can also bring those in on top. Great, so that is SuperSource. And once you've got it configured how you want, it is just another source you can change to. So down along the bottom here, I've got, you know, I can change between different cameras, but now I can also change and toggle the SuperSource as one of the inputs. I can queue it up in the preview, do a transition to it, all just as if it was another camera. And the last thing is it does have two color generators, which can be used as sources for different things. So either as the dip source for a fade, or you could use it as a background in SuperSource if you didn't want to use a graphic. So I can just go in here and actually just dial in the color right. Let's go and make it like something like this, maybe a little bit less intense. be a little bit dimmer. And now I can use this in, that was color 2, right? So color 2 is that blue, color 1 is white. And now in Super Source, I can change the background, for example, instead of from the media player, I can make it the color that I've chosen. And that frees up your media players if you just wanted the solid color background. And that takes us through the menu system here. So you can see there's a lot of different options you have possible to do, all from the device itself. That's one of the really cool things about this, is that everything is available in this menu. I've shown you there is a computer app already. So this is, all the settings are also available in here. Some of them are a little bit easier to use in the computer just because it's less push and twist and more just click around. But you can see it's letting us do all the same controls. We've got control over, the color generator is definitely a lot easier to dial in a color this way. We've got control over the transitions, the fade to black, the super source settings. This can be a little bit easier to dial in your super source settings this way as well. Got all the different key settings we looked at, the downstream key, your audio mixer is in here as well. This is, again, a lot faster to do on the screen compared to on the device. You can also manage your still images. This is also a little bit easier to sort of picture what's going on. So I mentioned there's these 32 slots for getting graphics loaded into memory, but then you can change what goes into the 2 media players. So I've got still 2 player could be my channel art. Still 1 is the background. Now I can use these in the different parts of the switcher. This is also where you can configure your stream settings. So definitely a lot faster to do here compared to like typing in or loading the stream key onto the SD card and loading it in that way. This way you can just paste the stream key in here. You can see that you've got the 3 stream outputs as well. So 3 different simultaneous streams you can do, and you can toggle each one on and off separately. So this has been your overview of the OSEE GoStream Duet. The OSEE GoStream Deck is the same features except missing the SDI ports. So this one has these 4 SDI ports along the side. The original version, which is also cheaper, does not have the SDI, but everything else about it is the same. Let me know down in the comments if you have any questions. This has been a long deep dive, but I hope it was interesting and shows you a lot of the unique capabilities of this switcher. Thanks again to OSEE for sending this over to share with you on the channel. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.